No, I was sitting up watching to see when daybreak was going to hit.
When were you able to sleep?
Well, I didn't much. When I got at work, sometimes I'd go in the break room and put my head on the table, take a little nap. But I survived it. I would sit right there. Now and then I would put my head on my pocketbook, try to take a little nap, and then I'd get up, look around, make sure nobody's around. Where I was living before, the landlady was telling me all her private business and I wouldn't listen, so she threw me out. So I became homeless. And I work at Walmart 2 to 11. So after work, I didn't have nowhere else to go. So after work, what I did, I came to the park and I sat here until the next morning, and then got up from here and went to work. And then I came back again and I met somebody from the shelter on Social Street. So he brought me over to this shelter on Social Street and they took me in. And then now we moved to Open Doors and they brought me in to Open Doors with open arms. It was cold, but I survived. And also when somebody did bring me over to the shelter over there, there's one of the staffs, I don't want to mention the name, but one of the staffs felt so bad, put me in his car and put the heat on because he knew my age, and then eventually they brought me in. I was here like 8 in the morning, and then I had to be to work at 2. So I take the bus here for 11, figuring it's warmer at work than here, because I'd start work at 2, get dropped off at the bus, and then come back here and sit.
I was in the park, I came across her, she needed a place to go, so I brought her to the shelter. Very basic, nothing really too exciting. She lucked out, she got a bed there.
Yes. I was glad when he said, I'm gonna take you to the shelter. So
Yeah.
I was glad, yes.
Homeless people are generally looked down upon.
Yeah.
You know, we're not the cream of the crop, so to speak, but we definitely stick together.
And I want to thank Michael.
No problem at all, hon. It's been a pleasure getting to know you.
And this is the shelter at 181 Cumberland Street. On August 1st, we opened up just down the street at a temporary location, and then it took us a couple months to finish renovating this building from there, and then we were able to open up into this permanent location and move all the residents over. This location has 50 beds, so 10 additional beds to the 40 that we had at the temporary location. So that allowed us to expand somewhat, but also it's just a much nicer and more permanent and sustainable location. But with those 10 extra beds, we were able to identify some people who were still sleeping outside, some of the people that were in encampments throughout Woonsocket, and help them get into a home. The other location had been open as a winter shelter operated by CCA. CCA ran the other shelter for several months throughout the winter, and then their winter shelter contract ended, and the contract that we had here was able to be used to keep that location open while we were waiting for this location to be finished. So now at that location, I know it's a musical chair situation. There's another winter shelter grant being used to reopen that location for the winter, so that now Woonsocket actually will have 130 beds for this winter, combination of 4 different locations.
I dealt with it because I had to deal with it.
Yeah.
And I just kept thinking positive that it was going to get better. And it did for Open Doors. Sometimes I'd get up from here and walk around just to keep warm. I would try, but since the rents are so high, and then, trying to get in Section 8, because I'm 75 years old, I find it hard. I've been out there looking for an apartment, but it's very expensive.
I was living with my ex-wife. They cut my hours from 65 down to 20. I wasn't able to afford my counseling, my medication. I ended up back in the hospital I knew it wasn't. It was a very toxic place for me to be with my ex, so I ended up moving into the shelter. I went to the hospital. I ended up losing my job. I didn't have anywhere to go. I went to Serenity Center, which is a drop-in recovery center. And from there, I ended up going into the shelter. The staff made it easier. They really have. I can't say enough about the staff. They're fantastic. I'm working on employment now. They're helping me with that. Going back to school, be a horticultural therapist. I'm a florist by trade. Before I was a cook, I was a florist for 20 years. I enjoy gardens. I enjoy being in the garden. I enjoy teaching people how to plant. A lot of them are family owned now. Nobody really hires outside of the family. Horticultural therapy is the route to go.
This building actually previously was a behavioral health center operated by CCA, owned by the state. It was then sold to the city using federal funds during the pandemic and used by the city as office space for municipal employees up until just recently when the city decided to lease it to Open Doors for the operation of the shelter. So this building has a long history of being put to good use. The thing that I want to emphasize about this location is this is one of only a few locations across the state in which we've been able to open up these new sustainable shelters using largely federal funds that were set aside during the pandemic to allow the state to adapt and respond to the homelessness crisis. So these places are much more sustainable, they're much more cost effective than a lot of previous locations, such as the motels that had to be operated while we were trying to find and renovate these more permanent locations. So we opened up a similar project in Pawtucket several years ago. And so it is pretty impressive now that the city of Woonsocket has also been able to develop a similar project. These are the types of spaces that we need to be able to provide the livable and sustainable shelter spaces that people need while the state tries to somehow figure out how to build more long-term, permanent, affordable housing.
Definitely, the new building's been fantastic. Plenty of space. We have more space for more residents. We have a third floor that they'll be working on soon. There's 2 common spaces to give me plenty of room to have groups. Yeah. We're going to start having recovery groups here. I don't want to be homeless, but if I have to be homeless, I want to be here.
So at this location, there are 50 beds. It's a combination of congregate spaces with about 4 bunk beds, spaces with 2 or 3 beds. So some places where couples can live together, and some larger congregate spaces. It has a shower. We provide dinners, but most importantly, we provide social services. So we have peer recovery coaching services, housing stabilization services, a job coach that comes. And so there's a lot of different services that are provided to be able to help the people live here move on and find their sustainable home.
I have 2 wonderful roommates. In my room is also a bunk bed and a single bed. Generally everybody here gets along very well. There's no competitiveness. There's nobody being greedy. Nobody with ill intentions. Yeah. We all get along pretty well, but me and my roommates get along fantastic.
Both my roommates are excellent, and we get along good. It's one's bunk and the other one's just a bed.
So the big project was upgrading the sprinkler system and the alarm system. You need basically full coverage in a building like this. So they had to go through, change all the wiring, reinstall all the devices, everything from the fire alarm poles to the sounding system to the smoke alarms. And then install, a larger, more complicated panel. So, all that work in this building took probably about 3 months, and then with the combination of everything else, and including the inspections, the whole project took up until just 2 weeks ago when we were able to open. Yeah, to open up a building to be a shelter, you need to meet the code that's set for a dormitory or a hotel. So it's the most rigorous fire code requirements, and required not only all that work, but everything from making sure each door closed properly and the glass was fire coded and the doors were fire coded, and like each detail. So this plan has been taking shape for over a year because the city council and the mayor's office has been working very hard to try to figure out how to respond to the homelessness crisis in Woonsocket. So they started asking us for our thoughts. They visited our Pawtucket location because they were trying to explore all options. The city of Woonsocket has been hit hard. There's a lot of people here that have lost housing, people from the surrounding areas that have come here who have lost their housing. So they've really taken the brunt of it, like a lot of the urban centers in Rhode Island. So I know that they were talking about this and working on this with local partners long before sort of we really got involved. Open Doors started working actively with the city council in the mayor's office in the spring. Exploring a couple different locations, ending up on this one. The city council passed a lease agreement. In May, we signed a contract with the state, I think June 1st. And so then since then, it's just been the process of hiring a contractor, getting bids, estimates, and then ultimately doing all the work that had to be done because the building needed quite a number of upgrades to be able to meet fire code to house 50 people.